Hello, everybody, and welcome to Korn Ferry Live. Great to have you all back for another episode in what should be a real cracker, but more to come on that in just a minute. As I'm sure you know by now, our aim here is to pick a topic that's in the news, or maybe a theme we know you're battling with right now. We then find some Korn Ferry brains to help break it down, in the aim of leaving leaders like you better equipped to tackle that topic within your organisation. But as always, we need you to get involved and tell us what you're thinking, or even what's keeping you awake at night. So get tapping. Put your question in the chat and I'll put those to our expert. I'm sure you might see my eyes wandering around the screen from time to time. Nothing to worry about. That's just me keeping an eye out for those questions in the chat. So don't let me down. I'm your host, Darren Bolton, Chief Creative Officer here at Korn Ferry. And today I'm joined not by one guest, but two. First up, we have Tessa Michalczek, Head of Research with the Korn Ferry Institute. Plus, we also have joining us Jonathan Wildman, Senior Client Partner with Korn Ferry Advisory. Tessa's an author and co-founder of the Happy at Work podcast. She also contributes to our very own This Week in Leadership and could often be seen public speaking on various topics. Jonathan, meanwhile, brings a very focused client perspective as he's one of our global account leads working in the thick of it to solve client challenges on a daily basis. And he always has an opinion or two up his sleeve. Together, the topic we're going to be exploring is how should businesses navigate the new skills landscape? We'll be looking at why you and organizations must rethink and refocus on skills, moving into a world where employees are increasingly valued for their skill sets rather than their job title, level, or their qualification. It's really about putting people at the heart of your talent strategies and structures. And as an extra FYI, this focus on skills features as one of our top talent acquisition trends of 2024. And at the end of today's discussion, we'll pop a link in the chat so you can check it out at your leisure. But before we kick off, please get those questions in as soon as you can. If I have one festive wish, it would be that. Tessa, Jonathan, welcome.
Hi. Thank you, Darren. Wonderful
Good to see you both. Good to see you. It's great to have a tag team of your caliber with us today. I feel so lucky. It's like having Hulk Hogan and The Rock join forces, unstoppable. Having said that, maybe it's more Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. We'll see by the end of it. We'll see you later.
I'm an Eagles fan, Darren.
So oh dear. Well, let's not worry about that. It didn't go so well the other day, but we'll swiftly move over that. We haven't got a lot of time today, and there's two of you, so we're going to have the questions will probably the answers be a little bit longer. So we're going to crack straight in. So the topic of skills have been growing in interest for a while, but right now it feels like it's more important than ever before. Tessa, let's maybe start with you. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think, Darren, that's a great question. And in the market, there's actually been a culmination of changes that have brought us to a place where skills are on the forefront of everyone's mind. So if we think about what are some of those changes, first of all, with the onset of emerging technology, most recently, obviously, generative AI, the need to continuously upskill the future of work is a reality that every company across every industry must consider. Second, the emergence of new learning platforms like Coursera or Udemy, these other choices that people can actually earn an education, learn skills, primarily technical skills in a lot of cases, that give them more job opportunities.
Right.
And third, with the rise of higher education costs, primarily in North America, we see younger people really evaluating what are their options more discriminately as it comes to the value of education and where can they learn these skills and get these key jobs. And so we've seen companies broaden the requirements to actually acquire new positions within their firms. And LinkedIn actually reported that last year, upwards of 40% of job postings no longer required a college degree. So skills have really become something that companies and candidates are really thinking about. It's really the name of the game.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And Jonathan, anything to add? Maybe something about, what you're hearing from clients, perhaps?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a rise in agile work as well. Clients are trying to tap into the widest range of skills available in the employee base. In fact, we were with a client last week and the CEO and the executive team asked the N-2 layer, the top 80 leaders in this organization, to think about their flexible work model and how to evolve that model. And the CEO was very open. He said, I don't think we have the skills in the executive team to figure this out. We need your help. We need the activation of this layer. So we commissioned 4 work groups to focus on this. And the presentations last week from the work groups went amazingly well. And these are skills that this layer wouldn't have shown, wouldn't have had the chance to execute without this idea about project-based work, initiative-based work, micro work. So we're getting calls about this week in and week out, and it's really fun to consult around it as well, because it's a really innovative area for a lot of our clients.
Yeah, sure. Jonathan, I'll ping this one at you. So should business leaders be thinking about skills, or is it actually a HR problem?
I think it's both. I think HR is there to help bring the talent to leaders. It's there to help develop the talent. And executives, the business, it's their job to then lead and help develop that talent as well. Unless they're speaking the same language. And that's really what skills methodology is. It's a language. That's the best way to ensure you're getting the most out of your talent. I've worked with organizations where there's different skills taxonomies, HR versus the business. And until those are reconciled, it's been a difficult task trying to get folks on the same development page. So I think it's got to be both.
Okay. And Tessa, any thoughts?
Yeah, I would just add that I think we're seeing a fundamental shift of the HR role in being more prominent in the conversations around business strategy. So I think what we're going to be seeing in the future is the HR function playing a much greater role. And for instance, the implementation of strategy, the operationalizing of brand values and the marketing function, it's really through people that any of this work gets done. And so if HR is not at the table, if they're not speaking the same language about what are the skills that are needed, if they're not really working closely with the business leaders of the organization or the company, then I think there's going to be a real disconnect in what is going to be required for the strategy as far as skills, and then where those skills going to end up coming from. So I think HR has to be at the table with the rest of the business leaders to really operationalize what is needed for the strategy.
Right. Okay, cool. Obviously, it sounds like we're talking about skills-based organizations. Tessa, can you tell us a little bit more about that and maybe touch on what the real benefits are?
Oh, absolutely. Jonathan actually spoke to one of them, which is really around creating an agile organization. So agility, adaptability, these are the words that we're going to be hearing, the main themes of the future, because as we see with the way the world is, if we know anything post-pandemic, it's that at any moment the world can change, and your company's got to be adaptable and agile to be able to change with it. And so what we see is that organizations that focus more on skills, that they are 57 times more likely to anticipate and effectively respond to those changes. The other piece is around talent retention and attraction. So again, with skills-based organizations, you're much more likely to be able to place talent effectively. And what's more important is that 98% of top performers are more likely to be retained at organizations. And then, of course, with skills-based organizations, you have innovation, you have problem solving, and you have the opportunity for more kind of cross-functional collaboration. So you have that diversity of thought that is creating more innovation for the company.
Yeah, brilliant. Jonathan, anything to add?
I think Tessa hit on most of mine in terms of what I would say. For me, it's all about speed. So I really enjoy speed of decision-making, speed of productivity, of performance. And when you put in this agile or this skills-based approach, you're able to get the right people in front of the right work at the right time and actually move the ball down the field a lot faster. And I've seen this firsthand in a number of organizations, especially this year. The whole skills landscape and the skills movement, if you asked me a year ago, I wasn't sure if it was a fad or not. And I was talking to colleagues about this, but I think we can all firmly say it's here to stay. We're seeing the benefit of thinking in that way. And we're actually able to use quite a few technological innovations to support skills-based organizations today as well.
Cool.
Could I add to that? Because I think, Jonathan, you brought up such an important point around speed. And honestly, I haven't really thought of it that way. So thank you. I'm learning on this LinkedIn Live myself. But I think your point around speed is really important when we think about industries. So we see a lot of industries that if they don't have the agility, the speed, the skilling, industries that might have traditionally or historically not been fast moving industries like higher education or CPG or some of these industries. But by bringing more skills into the organization, they can also pivot so that they're not completely disrupted by, innovators who might come into their space and completely disrupt the landscape. So I really love that you just said speed, because I think that's a really important point across many different factions of the business landscape.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is my festive wish has been answered. We actually have a question in from our audience. This is very exciting. And of course, I don't know other than this question, so it should pop up on the screen any second now. This is from Enrique. What are our top 5 skills companies are looking for?
Oh, I could take that one. We actually just came out with a new skills point of view for Korn Ferry. We did lots and lots of research across the entire firm. And what's interesting, and we'll talk a little bit more, I think, around the difference between competencies and skills taxonomy and so forth. But when you think about what are the skills of the future to create the conditions that we just talked about with an agile organization, innovation, creativity, and problem solving, the 5 main skills that we've identified in our research are really around adaptability, which we've already spoken to. Communication. So again, it's not just around communication, getting up and being able to talk, but it's around storytelling, and it's around being able to communicate. And another skill, collaboration. How do you collaborate, not just within your functional team area, but across the organization? Thinking critically, again, with the complexity, with emerging technology, with emergent change, being able to think critically is very important. And the 5th one would be empathy. And empathy is something that's really near and dear to my heart. I was so happy to see that it emerged out of the research. I think empathy is one of these things that we've been thinking, is it a trait? Is it something you're born with, or is it a skill? Can you learn it? We've actually learned that you can actually learn empathy, practice it, get better at it. But it's not just good in the context of understanding your customer and what their experience is, but it's also understanding your employees and what their needs are, and being able to really, as a manager, as a leader, be able to provide that level of value so that, again, you can attract that top talent into your organization and keep them there.
Great. That's great. We have another question, but Jonathan, do you want to add anything onto that?
Really quickly, part of what I do is executive coaching as well. And a couple of skills have come to the forefront recently that I think are worth mentioning. Digital savvy is one. I work with a lot of executives that are worried that they're being left behind in this digital movement, and how can they learn fast? That connects to learning curiosity, learning agility. That's a really big one. And then I think the last one is maybe the most difficult, and it has a foundation in self-awareness, but self-disruption. How do we get out of our own patterns? How do we think about things in a different way? How are we open and vulnerable to feedback to help us advance our company's agenda, our own work aspirations? I think that's a really important one that not a lot of people have figured out yet.
Sure. Great. So we've got another question coming in. Avalon, do you think a focus on skills means the death of the resume as a job application requirement or hiring tool? Anyone want to have a stab at that one?
I could start that one. So I think the answer is no. There's always going to be a place, a repository, if you will, where skills can be listed and learned about by prospective recruiters. I think LinkedIn is a wonderful platform for that. Whether it's internal or external mobility, having a place to list skills is critical. What I love and what I'm seeing more and more in the market is employers taking education and experience requirements out of job recs, out of resume requirements. And that's allowing people to really talk holistically about what skills they bring to the table. And that allows us to start to close the opportunity gap as well for people who might not have access to certain jobs. We do some wonderful work with Year Up, which is a nonprofit organization. They go in and they help people in underserved communities get access to opportunities they wouldn't otherwise have. And in working with those folks myself, the skills are there. The skills are everywhere. Mm-hmm. And if we take some of those traditional things out of the resume and just talk about what we love to do, what we're good at, I think we'll have better access for everyone to the right opportunities.
Brilliant. Great. If we go back, I'll go back to you, Tessa, now. I've got a different question for you.
Mhm.
So how are businesses adapting sort of their organizational structures to be more skills based?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Darren. And honestly, I think one of the parts of that question is really, are we chasing a skills-based taxonomy, or are we trying to align with certain competencies? And how should companies really think about that? So when we think about what are the competencies, and how can organizations really plan for the skills of the future, and knowing that upwards of 80% of skills will likely be replaced in the next 5 years. So it's really around organizing work as a set of responsibilities, whether it's a job, a project, or a gig. It's really understanding that skills will remain fluid. But if you understand the competencies, the capabilities, align it with the business strategy of the company, then you have a formula that allows you to be able to deal with emergent change and deal with those kind of changing skill sets all the time. It's also really important, and this is especially important in the multi-generational workplace, is to really view individuals and people, or employees, as people and individuals. Meaning, what are their unique skills? We know that upwards of new employees who are coming into the organization, primarily early careers or younger talent, have 40% more skills than the company even knows about, that's being even leveraged by the company. So are you having those conversations with your employees? Are you really understanding what is their desires for their own career, and how you can kind of marry what their career aspirations are with what are the skills that are required for the strategy, as well as the skills they want to acquire for their own career? And then can you create what's called a skills hub, which is really a centralized repository of skills, competencies, capabilities that are needed to perform all of these responsibilities, so that you can achieve the company's strategy. And it's really, one last point, it's really interesting. I was actually at a client site 2 weeks ago, and I got asked the question again and again, well, how do we know what skills people have? Or how do we know, where to start versus what are the skills we need? And assessment. You have to assess for it. You have to use assessment to understand what is the current base of skilling that you have, what are the inventories of skills that you need to acquire, and what is the reskilling or upskilling that you will have to put into place to meet the strategy of the company. So if you have that assessment, you can collect the data and then be able to do more predictive modeling, data analytics, to be able to really know what's needed for the future of work at that company, and to implement the strategy.
Okay, Jonathan,
Tessa, I know study after study is showing skills validation is top of mind in terms of areas of concern for executives and leaders, and trying to find the right assessment that'll give you the accurate view of skills is something that we've developed at Korn Ferry, but employers are certainly looking for. The only other point I'd make is that 40% of skills that employers don't even know about, if you access those, everybody wins. I mean, even Darren wins in that situation, right?
That'd be a nice change.
The employee is more engaged, the employer gets higher performance, and the client, the customer, the end user gets a better quality solution. So if we're able to think through this skills lens more and more, it's almost like you're accessing more parts of your brain. We only use about 10%. What if you could use 15%? You're only using 60% of your employees' skills. What if you could use 70%? Imagine the possibilities.
Right. I mean, I've got one more question, but I can see there's more questions coming in. It's very active. I like it. This is obviously a triggering theme, which we presumed it would be as well. So how do businesses make the shift to being a skills-based organization? Should they build, or should they buy?
Or should they buy is the question. Right. So we're seeing this huge shift to automation, digitization, and outsourcing around particular skills. You look at talent recruitment, for example, you've got suppliers and partners that have automated interview scheduling with candidates. There's a virtual assistant that helps to schedule the appointment with the hiring manager, with the recruiter, with the HRBP, and that's all done automatically. People don't have to do that anymore. So I think certain skills, we're going to see that trend pick up more and more. More transactional activities will be automated. But then, shifting it, you have to put the right development in place. You have to understand what your strategy is and what skills does that strategy connect directly to. Let's beef those up. Let's continue to outsource some of those transactional activities and focus on the strategic. I'm working with several clients on that right now. And that's leading to some big changes. I think going back to the previous question, traditionally you have companies that are often organized by geography. More of a skills-based approach is to organize by technical function or skill area. And in doing that, you ensure that the skills are focused, you're putting your resources in the right places, and you're advancing the ball downfield, as I said before, more quickly.
Nice. And Tessa?
Yeah, I mean, the only other piece I would add into is it's not buy, it's not build, it's not buy. It could be borrow, which borrow is really around that contracted interim worker. So this is if you look at the gig economy, which we kind of hear about, but upwards of a third of the economy is actually gig workers, and upwards of 50% of those under the age of 30 are actually having side gigs or moonlighting at night on top of their full-time position. So this concept of the interim worker, to be able to bring them in to help bridge skills gaps, to create innovation when needed, if there's a big transition or transformation happening at the company, when you need those skills very, very quickly, or you need to support a skills transfer because you're in the process of upskilling the organization, interim is a really great solution to consider in those situations. So when you look at your total talent management strategy, it is about recruitment, it's about development, it's about automation, but it's also about, is there a percentage of that workforce that could be interim, where you bring them into different parts of the organization when you really need to kind of invigorate the skill sets, the innovation, the creativity that's happening in that space.
Great. I think we've just about got time for a couple more questions I can see coming in from the audience. If anyone wants to ping one up, lovely. Serena, what are leadership teams doing about upskilling for the Gen AI skills gap? And what can organizations do to expedite that skills gap? Anyone want to take that one on? It's always a lot of pressure, isn't it? A question from nowhere. It's like, first of all, read it 2 or 3 times.
I'm happy to start.
It's not pressure. Reading the questions is a lot easier than answering them.
Yeah, no, this is something that Korn Ferry has been thinking a lot about. We have a huge kind of effort right now to look at Gen AI in the workplace, and how should companies and leadership consider that. One of the first pieces is around AI governance. So really thinking about, for the company, do you have an AI governance structure? Are you thinking about having an AI governance council or something along the lines to really be able to think about what is the skilling that's needed for the future? And also, how are we dealing with some of the ethical concerns that might come with Gen AI? How are we planning for how that's going to be integrated, not just in our business model, but also in the way that we develop and ready the workforce? We recently, just a couple months ago, did actually a survey that went out to CEOs and CHROs, 2 separate surveys. CEOs responded that 99% of them responded that they believe AI will have a fundamental or profound impact on their business in the future. However, for CHROs, only about 30% felt that their organization was adaptable and ready for this massive amount of transformation. So, there's the desire, the understanding, the reality that we have to get ready for generative AI and how it's going to impact our business, the competitive landscape, the market. But we have to ready our organization and our people, which means we have to think about those competencies that we've talked about before as it relates to adaptability, agility, collaboration, create a learning culture so that people are really, very open and transparent about learning these new skills, and also sharing information with their colleagues and peers.
Right, brilliant.
Can I add real quick? Sorry, Darren. The one thing I would add is humans inherently trust what we know, and this is new, and it's scary to a degree. So some of the teams that I'm working with are making it more common to check with ChatGPT when there's a question for the team. In the extreme example, I have a team that actually has a seat around the table for ChatGPT. It's a virtual AI seat that is there. It's an empty seat, and you look at that seat and say, "Oh, we've got to check with Gen AI on this one." So there are different ways to do it. I think we'll become more and more comfortable over time, but right now we're in that distrust phase of it.
Interesting, isn't it? I did see a Nadira question pop up there. Well, there it goes. Does the career path still exist for individuals?
I think it does. I think it's a little bit more horizontal than it's ever been before. Clients are really thinking about this project-based work piece and where can people execute that work, because so much happens virtually now. You don't have to move someone to a new geography or new country anymore to give them that mobility experience. Now you can do it. You can do it virtually. So I think it is still there. You're going to find that people are going to be doing more horizontal moves than in the past, though.
Just to add on to what Jonathan said, we actually just did a really cool piece of research that actually found through our engagement data that for high potential employees, if you actually move them, as Jonathan said, horizontally or laterally to a new challenge and a new function, that they are as engaged and satisfied as if you had actually promoted them. And so what we're seeing, especially again from those under the age of 40, those kind of early careerists, is that they're not just necessarily looking for a career path, but perhaps to have 2 or 3 careers within the same organization, knowing that they have that opportunity for internal mobility, meaning they can kind of move to different parts of the organization. They can take those transferable skills and really be able to apply them in different functions, learning a lot more about the whole of the company, rather than just being kind of stuck in one functional silo for their entire career. So I think there's actually so much more opportunity as it relates to career path.
Brilliant. That's great. That's great. I mean, we've covered a lot already, and I'm sure we could cover another couple of hours on this topic, and I'm sure there'll be more questions, but we do need to wrap up. We're running out of time fast. And so before we go, Tessa, Jonathan, any final thoughts you want to leave for the audience? Maybe, we've heard a lot of really useful points, but is there one thing that, they should take away from today? What should it be?
Tessa?
Sure. My only thought is that people are the greatest asset an organization has. That's the way you're going to implement your business strategy and grow your company. So make the investment in skills, make the investment in your people, talk to them, and it'll be a win-win for both the employee organization and the company.
Correct.
And just a huge thank you from me to our clients. We wouldn't have learned as much as we have right now without your engagement, your help, your partnership. We have the greatest jobs in the world because we get to work with some of the smartest minds and the most brilliant minds. And we are where we are because of you. So thank you so much.
Great stuff. So we have run out of time. We're going to have to call it down, I'm afraid. Thanks for your time. You've both been amazing. And hopefully we can do this all again soon.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having us.
See you guys.
Cheers.
And thanks to all of you out there for joining us and for all your questions. Amazing. We love it. As always, if you're looking for more information on this topic or others, please visit kornferry.com/insights. And as well as that, you should have seen the link in the chat to Talent Acquisitions Trends 2024, which we mentioned earlier in the episode. So please take a look at that when you get a minute as well. But that is it for now. Hope to see you all in the new year on another exciting topic. So until then, goodbye.